committee members present, myself, Councilor Di Natale, President Kuchmarek, Councilors Walsh, Zarella, Boschman, and also joining us, Councilor Squalia and Auditor Brooks, who is the recording secretary. We will actually, Council, start with 188-18, the second one down on the first page, in order that the City of Fitchburg approves the expenditure of funds from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection Recycling IQ grant in the approximate amount of $40,000 for the purpose of said grant, which is to reduce contamination in the curbside residential recycling stream. And I have a communication to read from Director of Public Health Steve Curry to the Mayor, dated June 12, 2018. Please be advised I am respectfully requesting an order be directed to the City Council to approve the expenditure of the above grant totaling up to $40,000. These funds are awarded for the purpose of reducing contamination in the curbside residential recycling stream. Funding will be used to print and mail outreach materials, advertise and support staffing needs, to provide direct feedback, and tag curbside recycling carts. Please do not hesitate to contact me if questions arise. I will open it up to the council or committee for questions.
Motion to approve 188-18. Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve 188-18. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Next, we will start at the top, 185-18 in order. Bear with me, it's a long one. That $4.5 million is appropriated to pay costs of replacing water meters, electronic registers, radio cellular network and data collection system, and other ancillary equipment, and the payment of all other costs incidental and related thereto. That to meet this appropriation, the city treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to MGL Chapter 44, Section 8, or pursuant to any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the city therefore. Any premium received upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this vote, less any such premium applied to the payment of the costs of issuance of such bonds or notes, may be applied to the payment of costs approved by this vote in accordance with Chapter 44, Section 20 of the general laws, thereby reducing the amount authorized to be borrowed to pay such costs by a like amount. And we have a letter here from Deputy Commissioner of Water, John DeLine, and Deputy Commissioner of Wastewater, Jeff Morosky, who are here this evening, dated June 8th, 2018. To the Mayor, I am writing to request authorization to borrow up to $4.5 million for the purpose of funding the project to replace and upgrade the city's water meters, electronic registers, radio cellular network, data collection system, and other ancillary equipment. This project is necessary due to the age of the existing meters and metering system, which have begun to experience high rates of failure, as well as suspected under-registration due to worn metering equipment. The new system will ensure that water usage is metered and billed correctly, and will provide additional tools for customers to monitor their water usage. Since sewer is billed as 100% of metered water usage, with the exception of irrigation meters, of course, the new meter system will also benefit the wastewater division, and accordingly, wastewater will be sharing in the cost of this project. I am requesting that the appropriation be in the form of a 20-year loan to be apportioned to the water and wastewater enterprise funds. The debt service generated by this proposed loan will be covered by the increases in water and sewer rates that have been instituted recently, which costs were taken into consideration during the respective rate studies completed by each division. Your assistance in this matter is greatly appreciated. Questions for committee members? Councilor Walsh.
I guess I would like to ask, maybe if Calvin Brooks could maybe speak to the debt service on this. Is that possible?
I was just talking to John and Jeff and saying that my intention would be that this $4.5 million project would be accounted for through the Water Capital Projects Fund, because the Water Department would be the one doing all the installation and so on. When the debt service comes up, it would be part of the Water Department budget, with a payment coming from the Wastewater Department to Water to cover their portion of it. And as was said in the letter, the cost of the debt service have been accounted for in the rate studies for both water and wastewater.
Council Boishman.
We talked earlier today, and again, I emphasize the 20 years plus the $2.5 million that we borrowed prior to that. Now we're up to $6-7 million a year, in 20 years. What I would like to see is get our debt down faster instead of waiting 20 years to pay it off. I'm tired of being poor. I'm tired of having bills all the time. That's all I want to say.
No, our goal is to minimize how much we have to borrow, but this was anticipated when we were increasing the rates, so we'd have to have a period by which we'd have to borrow some money to do some of these projects. In 2022, some of our payments for the plants will be paid off, so that's going to allow us to maybe, pay down this a bit quicker or put it toward other capital projects, so it's managed in that manner. So, it's kind of like you have a house. I mean, you have to borrow the money for the house and do some stuff there, but you don't want to be paying for every little thing out of your pocket. So, and you want to pay down your house as quickly as possible. So, kind of run the water department the same way. So, there's a lot of things we are paying for out of pocket, but this is a larger project that we need to borrow the money for. So.
All right.
Just so everyone's aware, I'm going to allow committee members to speak first and then non-committee members. So I have Councilor President Kuchmarek, then Zarella, and then Squalia. President Kuchmarek.
This shouldn't come as a surprise to this body. You spoke to us about it before, and in particular, those who were on the council last year. I believe, John, you reached out to all of us and asked for volunteers to participate kind of as a pilot or test cohort. I know I was one of those members. I take it the pilot and that cohort performed well enough for you to move forward.
We looked at those. We've looked at a bunch of different technologies and different companies, and we actually put an RFP out on the street a little while ago, working with our engineering firm, Weston and Sampson, and the bids are actually due this Thursday. So we're then going to go through an evaluation because this technology has changed dramatically in the last year. We want to make sure that what we choose for the city, and as a committee, it's not just myself. There's a number of us in the DPW that are on this. Choose which is best for the city. We want to make sure that we get basically the most bang for the buck. It's going to be the longest lasting system, while also ensuring accuracy of the system and also user friendliness to the customer. So, your particular one that you tested was cellular. That's a possibility. But the other options are what we call a fixed network system, where we'd have radio towers around the city. The cellular is a nice system, but there's a monthly charge to that for each account. It's about 80 cents each, so it could add up to about $100,000 a year just for the charges on that. So it's something we need to look at. Sure. And again, we're trying to make sure that when we do this, we're looking at something that's going to last well over 20 years without having too many issues. And we actually found with the existing system, I refer to these as electronic registers. They're starting to fail now, but the meters weren't replaced, but these were replaced in 2005 to 2007. They're supposed to last 10 years, and we're actually getting 12 or more years out of it. So we are having failures now with the first ones that were installed, but we are finding that their technology is proven as far as battery life, so we're happy to see that. So the guarantees that we get nowadays, whether it's cellular or anything else, we expect that to hold true as well. So.
In terms of the total course of work, when do you expect the project to start once the RFPs are complete, and at what point do you expect 100% of customers to have installation?
Our plan is we have to evaluate those, like the bids are coming in. We got a little short period to evaluate those, then choose the actual supplier and basically the brand that we're going to have installed. And then we have to do one more bid, which will go out right afterwards as far as the installation, because we can't do it on our own. The last project took quite a bit of time, just install electronic registers. So we're going to have a company assist us with the installations. But once we start, it'll probably be late September, October. We'd like to get it done in a year, because that way we don't have to worry about running two systems, the new reading system and the old reading system. So we want to expedite its installation and just get things changed over as quickly as possible.
In your communication, you mentioned there was an estimated loss. There was an expected loss of revenue from under-registered or unregistered accounts for I'm guessing, meter failure. Right. Do you have any idea of what the scope of that is? These older residential meters, they're now 20 to 25 years old. They could be as much as 2 to 5%. So we could have as much as 5%. Something we're also going to be doing is the large meters in all businesses.
commercial buildings, things like that. And those can be the ones that really under-register quite a bit because they weren't sized correctly. Their usage is down. And for example, we just had a business recently, a new business in town. They wanted a 2-inch meter. That 2-inch meter won't register flow under 1.5 gallons per minute. So we actually had to have install what they call a compound meter. It measures high and low flows. It's more expensive. They understand that. But we're going to do the same thing with the businesses and everything else, is right size those meters. So that under registration, the larger meters is actually more than, we know it's more than 5%. So,
2% on, say we go with the conservative estimate and say it's, 2% across the board, that still accounts, particularly over a 20-year period, accounts
Right.
for a huge loss of revenue. So, to Counselor Boishman's point, hopefully some of that unanticipated revenue that we've been losing that we now gain can help us to pay off some of that debt in a quicker period of time.
yeah, that's an excellent point. It's kind of, we're like a business too. I mentioned the house, but like a business too. It's like we're borrowing the money, we're going to get benefits and payback on it. So actually it's going to go toward paying the loan. So even when we have a loan, some of it's going to be paid back with this. If we hadn't done this, we'd be losing that money right along, and we'd have failures of the system, and become more work. So yeah, that's an excellent point. So
Thank you both.
Councilor Zarella. All set. Councilor Squalia.
So we're not sure exactly what design we're getting, but this particular design that you have is a radio fixed,
Yeah.
radio tower
This
communicating?
Yeah, this is basically the meter that's installed on, this is a residential meter, 5/8 residential meter that goes on their service line. Of course, the larger meters up to 6-inch, we're talking something, this size. So this is typical of what we're going to see in the new system, because this technology hasn't changed over decades. It's called a positive displacement meter. It has a nutating disc inside. So it's going to be very similar to this. The technology that's changed is actually this part of it. This is the meter head. There's a magnet in here that spins around and actually causes this to record the flows. These meters are much more accurate, even though the technology hasn't changed. They're much more accurate, as is the actual meter head that we have on here. So the part that will change is this part of it here, which is right now we drive by. It takes 2 of our employees 2 days each month to collect all the readings in the city, about 11,000. And we still have to go back out because some of the have a weak battery because of their age. So we have to go back out and use a handheld device to actually go up to each house and walk up to it and get that reading that wasn't captured when we drove by. So, and that's part of the reason we're having to replace some of these as the batteries fail. For the new system, it'll look similar to this more than likely, or it could have just a head on here. There's a couple different options, but it will then send a signal out to a tower, or it could be a cellular unit, which would just send readings constantly to us. The good thing is that we won't have to drive around anymore to read the meters. It'll all be collected through either the antennas or through the cellular system and come down basically to the water department computers. That's also beneficial to the customer too, because we also want, and that's part of the evaluation, make sure that the new system has a customer portal by which they could actually go in and see their water usage, not just what their bill is, but what they're using, on what days, how much water, and also tell them if they have a leak too. Right now we have a system like that, but we have to generate the reports and then go through them all to look at leaks. And we try to let people know if they have a large leak, but it's just not possible to go through all 11,000 accounts and get notifications out to everybody for every little thing that we think might be a leak. With a new system, they'll actually they could sign up for a text, an email, or something like that, and they'd get notified that there could be a leak. Doesn't always necessarily mean a leak, because as Jeff pointed out earlier, it's like somebody could be filling their pool for 24 hours and letting it trickle, so that could indicate an issue there. So it also, these things also have the ability to, we have a lot of frozen meters in the winter months. These freeze, and these are actually freeze plates on the bottom, so when the meter freezes, this cracks, and when it thaws out, or when it does crack, it'll fill somebody's basement. They could also get notified that this has the technology to, this one and the new ones, to tell the homeowner or property owner that they're approaching freezing conditions in their basement. So hopefully it'll help them as far as damage and things like that. When we went to monthly billing, one of the reasons was the increase in sewer rates. Part of it was for revenue coming in, which I've talked to Calvin a little bit about. But the second thing, and probably the more important thing, was to protect people against high bills due to leaks. We might be able to go back to quarterly and have some savings there with the new system. While at the same time accomplishing the same thing, that if somebody does have a leak, they won't go 3 months without knowing about it. They'll know about it instantly. So I think that's actually going to help some people, particularly, you know, maybe with some older plumbing and stuff that it needs more maintenance, to keep an eye on those type of things, and this will be a reminder to do so.
So we have positive displacement meters already
Correct.
installed since 2005, 2007?
Actually, they were installed, the most recent ones, they're about 25 years old. They were installed, what we did in 2005, 2007 was just the electronic registers, because the meters were only about 10, 12 years old at the time, and they're good for 20 to 25 years. We're at 20 to 25 years.
So we have to replace the actual metal portion, the positive
Right.
displacement meter as well?
Right.
On all properties?
Right.
Throughout the city?
Right.
And then including the head?
Right. In some cases, if the meter is only 5 years old, because we've replaced the number of meters too, or people have a new meter because of a new service, we're going to try to make sure that we can, even though it's a different brand, they will adapt to this meter. So we can actually have some cost savings here. So we talk about a $4.5 million loan. If we can save some money, and we got to go through this evaluation process and keep as many of the existing meters, even though we may change companies, that they'll still,
They're
work with that.
compatible?
Yes, exactly. So it's something we need to look at. So we'd rather not change every single one if we can avoid it, because it'll save money. But at the same time, we want to make sure that, we're not missing out on some things. So something that's 5 years old, a meter, we'll probably try to leave it in place. And knowing that it's got another 15 plus years of life, so.
And so this saves 2 employees, how many hours per month?
2 employees, 2 days, so.
2 employees, 2 days
32
per month.
hours.
So 4 days per month of employee
Right,
labor.
right.
And the gas in the car, driving throughout all of the city. Do you have what's the approximate value savings?
It's almost an employee, we'll be able to reduce our, our number of employees by probably one. There was 3 we actually have a vacancy now, and there was 3 in the meter room, and we're down to 2 now, in anticipation of, being able to, do the switch over, so.
And so the cost for the meters for larger services to businesses, will those be incorporated into this cost, or are we anticipating charging businesses for the upgrades?
The city code for the water division actually provides for charging the business owners, but it's something that, Jeff and I, once we see the bids, what we can do to try to be as business friendly as possible, so. Or maybe sharing the cost, so.
Great. All right, so customers will be able to get an email, be able to log in, you'll be able
We'll actually be able to go in and
have
look
a
at
user
their-
interface on the
We'll actually be able to
internet.
go in and look at their usage, and see, it's like, geez, I was away that day, you could see there's no usage, but then something leaked on another day I was away, it's like, oh, geez, I used, 200 gallons when that toilet got stuck, or something like that, so they'll be able to actually look at that themselves
That happened to
and pull
me.
up those charts, which is,
$1,000.
So a real customer-oriented upgrade.
yeah, and we'd like to do that more now, but it's very labor intensive to look at all the reports and actually get notice out to people, whereas this way they can just look at it themselves, so.
Great, thank you.
Motion to approve 185-18.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 185-18. Speaking on the motion, Counsel Boishman.
One question to John. John, going back to Council Chris Merrick, question to you. You said there was a third party, and it was costing you about 80 cents?
If we went to a cellular system,
Yeah,
each account, there's a subscription cost. So for each house, for each month, it's about 80-something cents.
and we're gonna do
So-
away with that, right?
Well, we don't have that now, but with the cellular system, that cost would be there. It's something we need to evaluate. Yeah, so, but the costs are coming down. So somebody who really wants to get into the city, the cellular technology is proven, but it's that monthly cost that's really, prohibitive as far as doing it. But we've seen some instances where, they've actually reduced it for whatever, the duration, so. But again, it's going back to whatever is most cost effective. The likelihood is that we're gonna have a fixed network system and not cellular, but, we wanna keep, our mind open as far as, once we get these bids in on, Thursday and start evaluating it, with our team, figure out what's the best for the city, so.
All right, I just like to keep a lot of the work in-house, not out-house.
Yep, no, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Are you gentlemen anticipating a flurry of calls once these are installed from people who are going to be upset because their bills probably going to go up because the readings before were not very good? I mean, how are we anticipating that likely event, because they'll look at us and say, we raised the rates again.
Yeah, it's,
And
you know, there will be some instances with that, because we know that some of these positive displacement meters get stuck. I mean, these things, contrary to what you sometimes hear from people, they don't over-register, they always under-register. So sometimes that nutating disc gets a little bit of, you know, debris in there. It
Slows
doesn't turn-
down or-
Slows it down
yeah.
or something like
Okay.
that. So there may be instances like that, and we'll work with people to figure out. I mean, we do it all the time. If their water usage is higher than what is typical for, you know, whatever number of people in the household, we try to figure out, you know, how they can save water. I have a terrific staff up there that, you know, really look at people's water usage and, you know, whether, you know, what type of toilet they have, whether it's old or what can be replaced. So we'll do whatever we can to figure it out. And that's happened on a number of occasions where somebody's had a new meter and it's gone up, and then we find out their toilets, you know, flushing. You know, I've actually gone myself to measure the actual flow through each toilet that flushed, and found out one toilet was like 5.5 gallons per flush, and, you know, instead of 0.7 with a newer one. And, you know, once they switched over, you know, especially when you retire and move home, you know, you're home all day long and using the toilet, that can add up to quite a bit. So, but yeah, we'll work with people and figure it out the best. I mean, that's something that's going to happen, but we'll try to figure out to make sure that, you know, that they're not using any more than what would be typical of the number of people in their house.
will you be submitting letters to ratepayers on the upcoming project?
Yes, we will. There'll be a notification. We probably won't we'll do it by the areas that we're working in, just to update them. So, if we send them out too early, then people, you know, kind of forget about it. So, as we go through each area, we'll do that, so.
I have a motion made and seconded to approve 18518. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Last, we'll take up all of the remaining orders together, 18918, 19018, and 19118, and 19218. 18918, in order that the City of Fitchburg approves the expenditure of funds from the Federal Forest Legacy Program grant in the approximate amount of $1,070,000 for the purpose of said grant, which is for the cost of purchasing a conservation restriction on a certain parcel of land in Princeton known as the Bomba property, $520,000 for the cost of purchasing a conservation restriction on a certain parcel of land in Westminster known as the Necrosis property, $300,000, and for the cost of purchasing a certain parcel of land in Westminster known as the Wright property, $250,000. And then 19918 through 19218 are simply orders piggybacking off of 18918, authorizing the city to obtain a conservation restriction on these three parcels of land. The letter from Mr. DeLine dated June 8th to the mayor reads as follows. I respectfully request that the city of Fitchburg accept the funding from the Federal Forest Legacy Program for the following amounts and purposes. Number one, accept grant funds in the amount of $520,000 for the purpose of purchasing a conservation restriction on a certain parcel of land on Green Road in Princeton known as Bomba property, consisting of 40-plus acres. Number two, accept grant funds in the amount of $300,000 for the purpose of purchasing a conservation restriction on a certain parcel of land on West Princeton Road in Westminster known as the Necrosis property, consisting of plus or minus 48 acres. And third, accept grant funds in the approximate amount of $250,000 for the purpose of purchasing a certain parcel of land on South Street in Westminster known as the Wright property, consisting of plus or minus 13 acres. The acceptance of said grants may require the expenditure of funds up to the total amount of $1,070,000 from the Water Enterprise Fund. However, Forest Legacy funding for acquisition of a property or for acquisition of a conservation restriction on a property will be deposited to the Water Enterprise Fund prior to the closing of each property. Therefore, the city will only be required to expend approximately $100,000 from the Water Enterprise Fund prior to reimbursement by the Forest Legacy Program. A small portion, less than $15,000 of the overall costs required for due diligence, etc., associated with said donation are not reimbursable and will be funded through the Water Division's existing budget. The properties on which conservation restrictions are to be placed will be monitored by the Fitchburg DPW, Division of Water Supply, to ensure that no unauthorized activities occur on said properties. Restricting each of these properties from development will further protect the City of Fitchburg's water supply reservoirs.
Motion to
Questions?
approve 189 up to and including 19218.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the four orders 18918 through 19218. Any questions on the motion?
I got one question.
Councilor Boishman.
John, according to your map here, the one on, where we got Bombay here, all this land in between here and here and here, who owns all that? Is that all conservation land too? or no?
It's a mixture of land that the city owns, some of it that the state owns, and then some private landowners, and some of that is protected, so, but a large portion of that area is protected or under conservation restriction, so this will further strengthen, the protection of our reservoirs.
Okay, so that means nobody can build in there at all?
Right,
Right
right,
between all of
Yeah.
this area?
correct.
Okay, that's all. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Second.
Motion made and second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.